Hello and welcome to the MeasurePod by MeasureLab, the podcast dedicated to the ever-changing world of data and analytics, with your hosts Dara Fitzgerald and Matthew Hewson. Between them, they've spent more years than they'd like to admit wrestling with dashboards, data quality, and the occasional Google curveball. So join us as we share stories about how analytics really works today and where it might be headed tomorrow. Let's get into it.
Hello and welcome back to the MeasurePod. I'm Dara. I'm joined as always by Matthew. Hi Matthew, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm all right.
What level of existential dread are you feeling today on a scale of 1 to 27?
I've been doing a bit of, you might not know this about me, Dara, but I do like being doing a little bit of woodworking to just take me back to the old times and just put me in a state of flow. And I think that's helped. It's like meditation.
I'm not sure 3D printing is actually woodworking.
No, I 3D printed a jig, which I used in my woodworking. So it all connects. It
does, yeah.
Thematic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. That's it. I'm good. That's all you're getting.
That's fine. It's fine. I wasn't actually interested. It's just for the content.
Yeah.
You know?
Feign interest, just to pretend we actually get on.
Yeah. Yeah. We hate each other in real life.
No, nobody's buying that.
No.
All right, should we get on with the news?
Yeah, there's a lot again.
There is.
I feel like we say that
Bit
every
of a
week
theme
now.
Yeah.
But there is tons and tons and tons. And don't know if we'll be able to get through everything we've got written down here, but we can give it the old college try, as they say.
Yeah, the news. I haven't checked this, but I have just a feeling that our news section is getting longer and longer every episode.
It is. And at the end, I'll just state why I think that is. But I think it's because more and more stuff is appearing and coming out that
Funny that
is relevant.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can chat about that at the end. But the top piece of news, I guess, has to be the Atlas browser that OpenAI released yesterday, 21st of October, as we record this.
Yeah.
There was rumors for a long time that it was coming. Everyone kind of assumed it would appear at Dev Day, but it didn't.
Yeah, weird to have it announced 2 weeks later. It must have been so close. I wonder if someone got a telling off for that.
Maybe, yeah. They were just about to announce it and it tried
sorry, it's not quite ready.
Yeah. Tried to murder everyone and they had to sort of just roll it back a little bit. But yeah, it's a whole standalone browser and I did download it last night. I used it. It was available to me. A lowly British person to use. And it kind of specified it as having 3 big features, one of which is just the fact that every new tab is just a new instance of ChatGPT, essentially a new chat instance. And you can type into it to sort of search and it will return very much like Google's AI mode. But then at the top, it's got just news or just web search and images. So it feels like Google, essentially, that they're going directly up against there. And the idea is that it kind of has memory and context of everything you're doing around the web that it can pull in and use to be useful to you throughout. And you've got a little sidebar if you want it at all times, having ChatGPT 5 there that you can talk about the page you're on, or you can do all sorts of things with it. I've not quite figured out yet. I every time I get these new things, I download it and look at it and I'm like, right,
what do I do?
Yeah. What do I do?
Yeah. Ask it.
Yeah, I should do.
What can
I don't know what I'm trying to think.
Help me use you.
But then the big feature, I guess, is agent. So
agent mode
can just sort of wander around your browser and do things for you. You can use it in logged in or logged out mode. So in logged in mode, it can go inside your accounts and do all of these things for you. So the example they used was they were making something just so wet, the examples they use on these things, but it was a Halloween pumpkin pepper recipe that we're going to do for the office party. And I'm so excited for this. And shut up. Anyway, they looked at that recipe and it figured out all the ingredients it needed. It went off to some supermarket and added all the bits to the basket, ready for him to then come back and purchase it. So it kind of can just go and perform actions for you. And the other example was they were planning a party, which again, they were so excited about. And it looked at who had replied and who hadn't and sent an email and added notes to a doc and things like that.
I assume it was a pumpkin themed party.
It was a haunted house party.
Yeah, loosely related. Yeah,
loosely Halloween related.
Yeah, well, I need to we need to come back to the agent mode, because I just wanted to mention a couple of the like simple use cases of the browser in general. And it is sometimes the simple things, isn't it? Because I'm not sure why, but when I kind of heard it came out, I was like, well, okay, great. But okay, I get it. You can use ChatGPT within the browser, but it's sometimes the kind of simple things that you don't realize are necessarily a problem until they're resolved. And one of the examples they gave was, this is a pretty common thing, if you have a whole load of tabs open, not something I would ever do. Obviously, I'm very highly organized. But if you've got a load of tabs open, and then you can basically just say to it, like, open up all those tabs that I looked at last week with all those different holidays I was thinking of booking or shoes I was thinking of buying, and it'll do it. Or you can, that certainly defeats the purpose. You just end up with a lot of tabs open again, but you can get it to kind of summarize or say, like, tell me all those things I was thinking about, and then tell me where I could find them, and tell me which ones have the best reviews or whatever. So that research thing, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago as well, didn't we? Where, that laborious, slightly frenzied research process when you're trying to find a product online, you get analysis paralysis, you end up with 1,000 tabs open. You can just offload some of that cognitive load. You can just say, and even it doesn't have to be, you could to summarize every pair of shoes I've looked at in the last month or whatever. And it will just do that for you, and you don't have to keep going back and finding them, remembering what side it was on. So it's stuff like that. And then the other one, which is, is a bit of it's not that big of a time saver, but it's still, these things do count, is at the moment where you're having to, if you want to take something from the web and then ask ChatGPT a question, you're either getting the URL and pasting it in, or, if it's an image or something, you're copying it or downloading it and then putting it into ChatGPT, whereas it can just see everything you're looking at in the browser and you can directly ask it questions about that. So it will quite dramatically change that browsing experience, I think.
Yeah, I think it's getting used to those workflows, I suppose, isn't it? Because there's so much muscle memory and years and years of
copy paste.
Yeah, copy paste and just moving around. And we do kind of cover it a bit in today's podcast about what we think the future of sort of the web and browsing is going to look like. But I definitely feel like if you can get into the swing of it and use it in the right way, it will be a massive sort of time saver. I think part of that as well, just to go back to the agentic thing, is trying to get it to do things and not sit and watch it. Which is the tendency you kind of want to do, to just watch this thing move around the screen and do things for you. But I think the overall idea is you can just say, right, I'm going to set this over here, go and buy me everything I need for this shopping list. And then you can wander off on other tabs and start doing other things. And it kind of keeps running in that tab, and it's still doing whatever it's doing in the background. You can have sort of 3 or 4 of these things doing various things in different sites for you while you're all over here doing something else. And that's a strange thing to get used to as well. Just leaving something to wander around and perform tasks for you while you do all the tasks. So I don't know, stare at a wall blankly.
I think that's it. It's unusual because we don't know what to do. That it's like, oh, but I was going to do that task. Now I don't have to. I better find something else to do while the agent is doing my task for me.
Yeah. There was actually an article, and I think we talked about this. Was it Mark Edmondson who mentioned it? But there was a BBC article came out that said there may be more burnout approaching because of AI. Because you can imagine, even though you've handed these tasks off to sort of 3 or 4 different agents that are off doing them, and then you're off doing something else, there's still a little bit of context locked away in all these tasks that you're having it perform and do. And it's just that tendency for people just to fill up any gap with more productivity that could be a problem.
Yeah, we might be just spreading ourselves thinner and thinner. You think you're moving on to something else, but as you say, you're actually keeping a little bit of, because you need to remember, there's no point of going off and doing the thing and then you not remembering that it's done it. So you've got to kind of keep track of that and be like, right, I better go back and just check that hasn't ordered me 8,000 pumpkins by mistake for my pumpkin latte or whatever it is. So you do have to still have some sense of what you're getting these agents do. And that does loop back into that other point, which is, and we've talked about this so much lately, but this double-edged sword of having this capability. And if you just let it loose and say, off you go, do all these things for me, there's a lot that can go wrong, both in terms of your own kind of mistakes, or the mistakes that the agent makes where it misunderstands you, it does buy 8,000 pumpkins, or then the more malicious stuff like this kind of prompt injection and hidden code on sites or in emails that then get acted on by these agents. So it would be so easy to just think, and this is going to happen. People will just say, yep, I want an easy life, so I'm going to just turn everything on and let the agent go off and do everything for me. And then those same people, and I'll probably be one of them, will then be complaining, saying, I can't believe it went off and did that. So it's going to be
so
tricky.
much pumpkin spice lattes.
I know, I'm going to be
orange.
drinking pumpkin juice for the rest of my life. It's going to be really hard to get that balance right between being able to delegate to agents and have that take away some of the misery of daily life.
Yeah.
Versus, like what the risks of that are. And even again, a bit like, reading the release article, whatever, from OpenAI, it was very similar to the one that Anthropic released around their Chrome dev. I forgot what it was called last week. You have to remind me again.
Copilot.
This is 2 episodes in a row that I forgot what the name is. Yeah, so Copilot or Chrome Autopilot, something like that. But it was the same, a lot of the same language. They're talking about red teaming, all the different problems, and they're talking about how they can only do their best to put these measures in place, but there's always going to be a risk. And it's kind of that language is becoming normal now. It's like all of the big AI companies are basically saying, you are, it's like leaving your car, it's like, what's that thing they say in car parks? It's like cars are left at the owner's risk or whatever. It's a bit like that. It's like, here's this thing we're giving you, but it could go really wrong.
It might kill every 10th person.
Yeah.
But you will be 10x more powerful.
Yeah. I was like, okay, well, that sounds good. I'll go for that. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that like evolves in terms of like the capability versus what you're giving away. And then there's the other aspect of, talking about giving away, you're also sharing so much more with this one platform or multiple ones if you're using different LLMs, and you're just giving all of this sensitive context about your life. And, if you're starting to give it access to bank accounts and Amazon accounts and, all the different logged in accounts you have, it's, the risk is getting bigger and bigger in proportion to the utility of it.
It is. I mean, that one of the features of this is that you can, I don't know how they were controlling it, but in the demo, it kind of stopped at purchasing and just presented him with the basket, whether he just set it for it to do that or whether it would, if you just asked it to go and purchase, it would just go all the way through. You would assume so because they have the protocol. What was it? Agentic commerce protocol that they released the other month. It was like 2 weeks ago. And you can take over from it and say like, I'm going to carry on going. I played with it a little bit this morning and it didn't blow me away, but I was asking it to do weird things. Like I was on LinkedIn trying to get it to cheat on a game for me and it just kept on asking for hints over and over again for like 2 minutes. Until I took over, and I tried to get it to go and collect data layer information from a site, which it didn't seem to be able to do. I just don't think it had access to the dev tools and things, which potentially is because of the things you've been talking about there about it's better for it not to have access to those things. I don't know.
But DevTools was something mentioned at the bottom of that article saying that that's what I don't know exactly what they meant, but they did say in terms of like what's on the roadmap, they did talk about like better dev tools. So maybe that is, but you're probably right. The reason why it's probably further down the line is because of the safety concerns.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It doesn't feel very far away now that you could, with combinations of MCP servers or the computer use stuff from moving around UXs and it just being a co-pilot across things, that you could just, some of the things that may have been a mainstay sort of 3 years ago of working through e-commerce journeys and designing data layer specs and testing that they're in place and working correctly as you move through journeys and all stuff like that could pretty much just be tasked and handed off in a completely automated way. It feels, if not already possible, pretty much there, which is amazing, really, to think about.
And even whether, though, and this is maybe a light spoiler, but I'm not going to spoil anything, but this comes up, or something to do with that comes up in today's, with today's guest around whether these journeys are actually going to become more personalized or individualized as well. So like if you go and buy something through ChatGPT browser or whatever, is that going to be the same user journey that I will have? Because if it knows about us, we might not have to go through that same journey. So, and then the knock-on effect of what that does in terms of data collection and analysis and trying to optimize. And it's all going to change. Basically, everything's going to change completely.
Yeah. And on that front, so we've all just had our heads turned by the Atlas browser, but in like sort of looking around the Atlas browser and doing a bit more reading about it, I realized two massive other pieces of browser AI related browser news had happened that we kind of passed us by. So the first is like about 3 weeks ago, Perplexity released a browser called Comet. So another AI player getting into the browser game. I've not seen a huge amount about it, but they released one. That's as far as I've got. And Atlassian, the makers of Jira and Confluence, so that, you know, the people who are really in the enterprise work world, or the browser company. The browser company make the browser I use called Art, which is supposed to be sort of an AI first type browser thing. They bought them along with they've just released Rovo Dev, which is their AI CLI dev tools and things. It seems like Atlassian are making moves to try and carve out space in browser and CLI. Seems like those two, Steve internally said today, those two seem to be pretty common battlefields across the AI players, browser and CLI.
Well, you should be quite happy with the Perplexity news because they're tackling slop. They're going to bring down slop. This was their at least that's part of their kind of marketing spiel, but this is in response to the kind of low quality content that's being, I don't know, it's being prioritized, but you know, that's being kind of pumped through some of the browsers. So because I think the Comet browser was $200 a month or something, and they've decided to just roll it out for free to everybody.
Wow.
Because I think the thinking is for it to truly get people on board, it needs to be accessible. But this is their angle on it, is that they're tackling the slop.
But you think you've got to feel now that in the same way that Google was sort of jolted into action with just LLMs in the first place when OpenAI first came about, you can imagine a lot of people are going to go and download that browser. They've got a big audience. Google has been, you know, poking around the edges of Copilot, and they had this Jarvis Copilot that was supposed to be in Chrome and things like that hasn't been realized yet. I wonder if this is again going to have to just push them into action before they start to. I mean, they are ridiculously dominant in the browser space, but so were Netscape, so were Internet Explorer once upon a time.
That's it, exactly. You know, you can't rest on your laurels, can you?
Nope. What else did I have on here? Claude Skills.
Yeah.
It's like these ways of sort of giving Claude context about specific operations and things you do in the form of like these YAML files, I believe. So you can almost sort of get it to, it's almost like prompting a little agent that will follow, I don't know, your branding guidelines or write things in a particular way in templates. And some people in the corners of the web were hailing this as bigger than MCPs. It certainly seems like we've been using something internally called the BMAD method, which is like a series of different agents that you can use with Claude Code or other CLIs or other LLMs that will run through systematically various templates and checklists and prompts it's got, and then it'll hand one task off to the next task, to the next agent, and another one to the next agent. And it's proven very powerful. So I think this is a way of being able to define and chain together these things. I've not had a huge play other than in BMAD, but it's interesting.
Where do you do because I haven't at all. I mean, I was away, and I saw you posted actually that the skills have been released, but I haven't played around with it yet. But where do you actually? So is this? It's not a Claude Code thing. It's it's Claude Desktop, Claude Main Claude, Core Claude.
Apparently, basically, you can use it anywhere. It doesn't have to be Claude. So within Claude, you can upload these files and sort of set them as skills, but the files themselves are essentially very structured prompts, I believe. So you could design one of these files and then take it to OpenAI and just give it that file, and then it'll start acting in that way. So I think what Claude has done is sort of integrated that into Claude, and it's got like capabilities and skills, and then you've got all these different skills that you can turn on and off. So like the examples they give are like brand guidelines, internal comms, canvas design, so they're different little agents that with skills that can perform tasks. And it has like a chain of thought thing, and it can move through different skills and pass one thing off to the other. So yeah, it is super powerful, sort of taking inspiration from BMAD to make our own sort of marketing team almost within Claude Code and Claude, using sort of similar stuff. And it is pretty cool, pretty powerful what it can do.
Yeah.
There's Claude Code on web. which again is you can use Claude Code in the web and set it off to do multiple tasks in parallel, and it can work when you're not there, and it can perform tasks on actual Git repos and all these sorts of stuff, which is, I think, pretty similar to what Codex is from OpenAI and what Jules is for Google. So I think they're similar products, but I think Claude has now entered that space, which should be interesting to have a deeper look at, because I'm a bit of a Claude Code fanboy. And then this was a bit of is this lighter or is this quite dystopian still? Channel 4 in the UK have, I think it said the world's first. They presented pretty much an entire Channel 4 program on Dispatches with a AI presenter. And it was kind of the gimmick of the thing. I think the Dispatches was about AI and AI taking jobs. So I think at the end, they revealed that this presenter wasn't a real person. And they kind of showed all the shots, and then the presenter being sort of generated into them, just to sort of proves the fact that AI is pretty good.
Hang on.
It was quite convincing from when I saw it.
Too many questions about this. So is this kind of like a AI slop type thing? Do they actually generate an AI person?
Yeah. Person and voice.
Oh. So we are getting a step closer to replacing ourselves on the Measure Project.
Yeah, it was pretty convincing. I don't know how long it took, but there's a video. We'll add the video. There's a video somewhere that I found in a Dropbox of the thing, or go and watch Channel 4's Dispatches that will probably show it. But yeah, it was pretty convincing. We'll add it to the show notes. But interesting. You can imagine more and more of these, especially now they get realer and realer.
Yeah.
Cost of doing that compared to the cost of paying for a presenter for however long is significantly different.
Oh.
It's not nice, is it? But ultimately, everything comes down to money.
But why? Why does it?
Capitalism, baby.
That's the one. Yeah, that's it. That is interesting. Channel 4. I mean, that's going to set the cat among the pigeons. I think it's going to.
Yeah. They've done it. They've done it to point it out. I think it's quite a meta use of it to say AI is taking jobs. Even the presenter who says could even take my job because I'm not real, and then it flickered in and then showed that she wasn't a real person.
Yeah, but AI can't take AI's job, can it?
Maybe Claude can take OpenAI's, or OpenAI's can take Gemini's.
Yeah,
and then they'll start. Maybe there'll be AI unions of different agents with different skills before long striking.
That's interesting. Yeah, we include that video in the show notes. I think that would be nice to. We need to stop terrifying people, though.
Yeah, I'm trying to look down this, see if there's anything good, anything positive. I was trying to find. I went Googling positive AI news earlier, but couldn't find anything that was recent. I mean, you could argue all of this stuff has positive spins on it,
very much
automation, things like that.
Yeah, I think especially the first ones. I think the browser related news. There is always. I mean, it's like with any new technology, isn't it? It's powerful and therefore it can be dangerous.
Yes. Absolutely. There was also. Let me do two more. I'll do two more quick AI ones, and then there's a couple of just good old-fashioned Google Analytics BigQuery pieces. Braze. So last week we were talking about OpenAI's new in ChatGPT, and Braze has created an OpenAI SDK, so you can allow developers to track customer engagement with OpenAI apps. So that's the first company I've heard entering that space of sort of tracking things within the OpenAI interface and seeing how companies are interacting with it. Interesting thoughts around what data do they get from context of the chat or not, and yeah, lots of questions there. And similarly, Salesforce have partnered with OpenAI to surface like customer query sales records and customer conversations and build Tableau visualizations and things within ChatGPT. So they're kind of entering that game as well. And then the two palette cleansers at the end, as it were. This was a little while ago, but Google GA4 data is now available to pull in from BigQuery. So you don't just have to sync from GA4 into BigQuery, which is just sort of the raw data, and you can't backfill it. But with this, it's essentially using the API. So you can pull out specific reports, design your own extractions that gets pulled into BigQuery and do backfilling and things like that with it's using their BigQuery data transfer service. So some of the questions we had were like, what does it do in terms of the attribution settings and all those settings you can sort of turn on and off, and it is instantly reflected within GA4. Where does it get that information from? Because that's not necessarily available in the API. How does that work? So we're kind of doing some investigation internally to figure out exactly what goes on there.
So I guess it's limited by to an extent by the API tokens and limits.
Yeah, I wonder. I do wonder if they're doing. I mean, we've built a couple of custom extractors in the past for UA and for GA4, and we've had to sort of stack the tasks and do to get around the API query limits and batch them, so we don't end up with sampling and things like that. So I'd assume it's all kind of built in to the transfer service, but we'll see.
Good to include a bit of trusty GA4 news.
Yeah,
in a while.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's
a lot.
it.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
On the subject of a lot, I just wanted to churn through very quickly, in 3 seconds, why we think these new segments are getting longer and longer. But since October, what has happened, and we've covered most of this, if not all of it, on this pod: OpenAI Agent Kit, OpenAI Apps in Chat, Sora 2 or Slop Talk, 5chan DBT merge, Claude Sonnet 2.5, Claude Haiku 2.5, Agentic Commerce Platform, Nano Banana, Chrome DevTools MCP, GA4 MCP, BigQuery MCP, Chrome Pilot, BigQuery Data Engineering Agent, Gemini Enterprise, Friend AI Device, Meta AI Glasses, Claude Agent SDK, Gemini Computer Use, new Claude features, and updated GA Analytics, Google Analytics agent within Google Analytics for itself. And that's not including anything we've covered today.
That's not that much, really.
Well, we can up our game. I think really start going deep.
Yeah. I think we need to. I wonder what the longest podcasts are on Spotify. We need to go for that record.
Yeah, I think we might be getting there this week.
Joe Rogan. We are entering Joe Rogan territory. We just need to up the saltiness of the news as well. That is an incredible amount, and it's probably going to continue to increase. So, and even that, we're missing things. So, including that.
My hope is that there's dev days and things like that tend to be in and around the autumn, that maybe we calm a bit. But God knows.
All right,
that's it.
That's it for our 4-hour news section. So. Our guest today is Yali Sassoon, who's one of the co-founders and is the CTO of Snowplow. So we had a really good chat with Yali. I started with a bit of a confession saying I don't know why we didn't try and line him up sooner. And it took Mark Edmondson to recommend him recently. But Yali's great, really smart guy, really interesting. He had a lot of good views. We asked a lot of our kind of, trademarky kind of future looking questions, and he had some interesting takes. And I think one of my key takeaways was how optimistic his view was, because we do tend to lean towards the dystopian existential threat kind of views. So
it sells the merchandise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But Jay, I thought Yali had a really optimistic but also quite practical view on how things are taking shape, and it was interesting to hear kind of how they've evolved at Snowplow and how they're taking advantage of kind of the rapid pace of change in the space we're in.
Yeah. No, I think you captured everything there. It was a really good chat. And another eye-opening one. Lots of interesting takeaways for sure.
Enjoy. A very warm welcome to today's guest, who is Yali Sassoon, co-founder and CTO of Snowplow. So Yali, firstly, welcome to the MeasurePod, and thanks for agreeing to join us.
Thanks, Dara. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Really good to have you. I'm actually surprised and a bit ashamed that we haven't got you on before. And you were recommended recently by Mark Edmondson, who was a recent guest of ours. And I said,
very kind of him.
Yeah, I said, damn it, I can't believe I haven't thought of Yali up to this point. So it's good to have you on now. But for the benefit of our listeners who maybe are less familiar with Snowplow or don't know you, we always get our guests to introduce themselves. So you can take as little or as long as you like and to give a whistle stop or a more detailed background, but just a little bit about who you are, your journey leading up to what you're doing today.
All right. Let me try and not take too long to introduce myself. So thanks for having me on, Dara and Matthew. It's really appreciated. I am, as I've always worked in data all through my career. I started my career as a consultant working with companies in the shipping and logistics and energy industries, using data to optimize operations. And I went to PwC as a strategy consultant, saw how data could be used strategically to drive organizations and at a kind of a higher level. And then I got my sort of break in digital. I always wanted to work in tech, working in a startup that was at the time called OpenAds and renamed to OpenX. And at the time, we were the fourth real-time ad exchange. This was way back in sort of the 2000s when ad tech was still cool. It's hard to remember now. Now it's That's a little bit awkward talking about ad tech, but at the time it was one of the early VC-backed companies that was headquartered in London. Skype was the big one that everybody wanted to work out. A number of the ex-Skype team moved over to OpenAI, and so I was lucky to be one of the early team there looking after data and getting to work with digital data at scale. So that was very exciting. I left there. So that's where I met my co-founder, Alex. He was on the engineering side and I was on the kind of commercial side. And we spent a few years, really between 2008 and 2012, having too much fun running our own consultancy. So it's just the two of us. We built a roster of quite interesting companies, mostly based around London, working at the intersection of data and tech and strategy. And that gave us the freedom to sort of experiment with building things on the sides. And one of the things that we were really sort of excited about was this kind of explosion in digital experience that happened with the advent of the iPhone. You know, this is going way back, sort of the early 2010s. And that period where there was an app for everything. And so suddenly there were all these things that we used to do without an app or a website that suddenly you could do with them. And as data people, that was really exciting because you could download from these applications very, very detailed data describing how people collaborate with their workers and productivity tools, or flirt on dating sites, or manage their health and fitness apps. And the data was amazing. It was so broad. It was so deep. You could collect it at crazy scale. And with our kind of consulting hats on, we really wanted to help our customers use this really new, exciting data to much, much better understand their customers and deliver them a much, much better service. So to give a really simple example, we were working with retailers who'd had lots of success doing the kind of Tesco club card thing. So they would see what people bought and profile them based on that, and then give them personalized offers based on their purchase history. But actually it's really interesting, not just what they purchased, but what they tried to purchase and didn't. That's an obvious marketing opportunity. And that was the kind of thing that was in the behavioral data that you could collect on the digital platform. You can't necessarily collect physically. You don't get to see when someone walks around a store what they looked at and thought about buying but didn't buy, but you can do it in an online store. And when we tried to do that with our customers, we found it really difficult. That data was locked in Google Analytics or Omniture, as it was called at the time. And so it was hard to get at. And so crikey, this is taking a lot longer than I was expecting. And so the idea hit us to take these amazing big data open source platforms like Hadoop and these new cloud web services things, Amazon Web Services thing that let you spin up these really complicated tools really easily and only pay for the servers while you were running them, and build a platform that would let any company build effectively a clickstream data warehouse. And at the time, there were a few organizations with clickstream data warehouses, but they cost huge sums of money because you needed a teaser or vertical, these other very expensive technologies, big networks and lots of expertise. And so Snowplow was this open source project that was born to kind of democratize access to that and make that really easy. And so we created that for ourselves and we implemented that some of our customers in 2012. And around that, a big open source community sort of sprung up of other people around the world who were like, we want to do that too. And they set it up as a big community in Sao Paulo and in Berlin and in Sydney and all these different places. Users started popping up. And so we carried on running the consultancy, but we spent more and more of our time working on the tech until we both sort of went full time at Snowplow in kind of 2015. We're like, no, we're just gonna grow this company. And so the focus for Snowplow as a company was really helping people build a great data foundation with their clickstream data, with their what we now call their behavioral data. And that journey has continued until today. So the technology's evolved a lot. At the beginning, we were very focused on analytics use cases, so marketing attribution, cohort analysis, customer journey analytics, and so on. And then more recently, we've been very focused on machine learning use cases and actually helping organizations take this data and use it operationally in their build actual data products that personalize their search results or do other valuable things with it. And most recently, we've been looking at how we can help organizations that are building customer-facing agentic experiences. So chatbots on their websites, but also generative UIs and other things, what they need to do with the data, how this data can power those sorts of applications. So in that time between 2012 and 2025, I guess a long time, the way organizations have used that data has changed very, very dramatically. And our software and our product set has had to keep updating to enable our customers to deliver all those different use cases, which means I haven't been bored at all on that journey. It's been a very fun space to be in. But yeah, that's me in a not really in a nutshell.
It's always the hardest question. It's almost like we're cruel. We say to people, "Come on, introduce yourself," and then it's like, "Oh, right, okay, how do I do this?" But no, look, that's really, really interesting and does tee us up for what I guess we're going to focus more on both the current, the kind of present day, but also more of the forward looking, both for Snowplow and just in general, your kind of thoughts on where everything's going. But before we do get into that, I'm just kind of keen to ask maybe one or two questions about the earlier days. I suppose the first question I had was, did you think when you conceived the idea that you would end up focusing on it full time? You didn't?
No. We thought the first version of Snowplow we built in less than a day. So we thought we were kind of surprised we got something that worked so quickly, and our intention was to use it, but it was just a tool for us. So we were sort of surprised that as many other people wanted to use it as did. And then right at the beginning, we very naively thought, well, it'll take us probably 6 months to turn this very, very rough data pipeline into something that's more polished, and then we'll be finished. And then we'll go back to doing the thing that we love doing, which is actually using the data that it delivers. And what we hadn't factored was how fast the space was evolving and how much every capability you build, the demand for additional capability just grows and grows and grows. So that was a big learning. And there's still a part of me that is a little bit sad that I don't get to do any data analysis really. That's prior to Snowplow what I really enjoyed, but I'm not complaining. I get to do lots of fun things.
And my other question, which you kind of answered in a way at least, so you said about how from the very early days there was a kind of keen user base and they were popping up all over in different parts of the world, and it was kind of open source community around it. But from maybe more of an enterprise perspective, did you find it hard in the early days? Was there a lot of people who were just tied in with GA or Omniture and just thought, oh, we see what it could do, but we're just going to stick with what we know? Or did you actually find that there was a lot of frustration even then, and people wanted a little bit more control over their data?
It's a really good question. So the landscape changed a lot in the time over that period. So at the beginning, most people I talked to about Snowplow were like, why would I do that? What's the thing that lets me do that I can't do in GA? Had a lot of that. And I was going to a lot of conferences talking about what we were doing. I went to all the measure camps and others, and it was always the question that I got. But the industry changed, and so when GA came along and had the integration with BigQuery, that was a big moment. So quite a few people pinged me and are like, "Oh, now Snowplow's finished. There's no need for you guys. We can get the event level data ourselves." But actually, that was a real blessing because it was Google coming out and saying, "Hey, there's this whole world of stuff you can do if you have access to the underlying data, and we're going to let you do that." So that was a big shot in the arm. That sort of changed the way people thought about things. The other thing that really changed A couple of other developments that really changed the way people saw things were the growth of cloud data warehouses, so Redshift, Snowflake, and then BigQuery. Before that, we were really writing the data to files in S3, and you'd have to spin up an EMR cluster. It was just a horrible experience, and one that most analysts would never abide by. As soon as you had it could load it in a cloud data warehouse, the data was really easily accessible. You could stick Tableau, any familiar analytics tool on top of it. And so the birth of cloud data warehouses meant suddenly you had organizations with data platform teams going around and systematically trying to centralize their data and let people do kind of combine all their customer data sets all in one place, the product data sets in one place. And so that was a big thing. And that sort of led to the modern data stack, which has since kind of imploded. So there's quite an interesting arc or cycle we can explore there. And then the other thing, the other sort of technological change that changed the way people were thinking about this was the whole Kafka real-time data processing, stream processing. Can we use this data in real-time systems? And I feel sort of the cloud data warehouse stuff happened really, really quickly. The real-time data processing stuff is happening much, much slower. So Kafka came out. I feel like all the real-time technologies, we saw all this innovation in 2015, but even today, they've not been widely adopted for like stream processing, kind of analytical or machine learning workloads is still like very rarely done. So the whole adoption of that has been much, much slower. And a lot of my time at Snowplow, especially with our new product Signals, has been helping organizations get those kind of real-time personalization use cases like kind of in product live, which is surprising because all of that technology has been available for a long time, but I think it's a lot less accessible and a lot harder to use than kind of all the tooling around the cloud data warehouses. It's another area where you just can't do that stuff with Adobe. You can't do that stuff with Google Analytics. So I'm really not being very brief today at all. But to come back to your question, the objections have changed over time. There've always been organizations that have been happy with those tools, and that's fine. But the number of organizations that have been looking at outside those tools has grown and grown and grown over this period. And that's really been driven by some of the factors, some of the technological factors that like these new possibilities that the technology enables, and organizations looking to realize that, and them not being well supported by that tool set. It amazes me still to this day how many people are still on the first bit, as in getting the data into the warehouse and centralizing it and joining it up before they even begin to get to the real-time processing. It feels like there's a lot of people out there that are still at that stage. I don't know how much you see that. I mean, maybe that's part of the lag of you having to go out and help people figure out that real-time piece, because often it's marketing teams and people who are almost creating their own warehouse off on the side to get around central bureaucracy.
There is a lot of that, and I actually often forget it because those aren't the people who are struggling with it are not the ones that we're typically talking to.
Yeah.
So there's a whole part of the market that we don't really address, and that is probably much bigger than the part of the market that we address. But more and more people are coming over. In defense of those organizations, there's a lot of legwork to do before you see a return on that investment. And so cost-conscious companies are quite rightly wary of taking it. And I think one of the things that we haven't been good at as an industry is, and we're certainly trying to do with all our customers, but it feels like we're swimming against the tide, is show how you can take a big infrastructural project like a data replatforming and look to deliver some real return on that investment really, really early on, long before you're finished with the replatforming. There are no enterprises that have got the patience to wait for a soup to nuts replatforming from start to finish. You've got to find use cases that you can unlock really, really early in that journey that surprise and delight the stakeholders to give the project momentum. And I see too many organizations sort of rolling up their sleeves and going like, right, we're going to
redo our eventing infrastructure. Our tracking's all over the place. Our data's all over the place. We're going to rethink this from the ground up and get everything right first time. And I love the enthusiasm, but it's not a good approach. Yeah, it normally ends badly. And I don't think we probably spent enough time talking or thinking about that.
So has your typical customer, and I mean the person within the organization or the team department within the organization, has that changed over time?
It's only started to change quite recently, actually. So in the very early days, it was a real hodgepodge of different, we used to call them internally data MacGyvers. They're kind of mavericks within an organization that had the autonomy to go off and spin up infrastructure and get stuff working. And they asked for forgiveness, not permission. And they often got amazing things accomplished in incredibly short periods of time. And they're often running ahead of their organization. And we go and meet them and realize that a lot of the colleagues didn't realize really what they were up to, what they were doing. So that was very much 2012, 2013, 2014. I still know some of those people. They're brilliant minds. As the cloud data warehouse thing sort of settled in, there's a sort of like head of data platform that became our primary stakeholder in most of the organizations that we worked in. And they had a remit within their organizations of building shared data infrastructure and assets and data products and so on that could power the business. And they were either the same people or they worked very closely with the team that were trying to drive self-serve analytics and business reporting. And then they were also collaborating with the kind of machine learning teams that started springing up to try and build valuable models and deploy them around the business. The change, the real change that we're seeing is only just happening now. So a couple of weeks ago, we launched Signals, which is really only our second product. It's our core Snowplow customer data infrastructure, like the pipeline from collecting the data from all these different platforms, all these SDKs, and doing that in a scalable and robust way, and streaming that data into the data platform, into cloud data warehouse and stuff. If that was the first product, Signals is the second product, and Signals is really geared towards product and engineering teams that are starting to deliver different experiences to different users. So there's this shift that's happened in product engineering. Your average product engineering team has always built one product for all the customers. And if you've got two customers in the product that need to do two different things, like maybe one of them's there to buy shoes and another one's there to return the shoes they bought in the wrong size, it's on the customer to navigate around the product to figure out where they need to go to do the thing they want to do, but everybody gets the same experience. And that's been the paradigm since digital products sort of were born. But now AI is making product managers and product engineering teams more generally think about, we've got these different users who've got different needs and expectations and jobs to be done when they're in our tech. How do we deliver all of the right experience? Like, why don't we try to meet them where they are instead of making them do all the work? And it's AI that's kind of driving that shift in mentality. And that's really exciting. But it means that suddenly these teams need infrastructure they didn't have before. And some of that infrastructure is kind of all the AI ops stuff, and they're great solutions in markets that do all of that. Think Databricks, think AWS SageMaker, think all the Google Vertex stuff. There really are a brilliant and growing number of providers in that space. But around that, they need real-time customer signal. They need to know right now, who is this customer? What are they doing? What do we know about them based on the historical data? What can we see about what they're doing now? And what are the best guesses we can make about what they're trying to accomplish? And then across that signal, or we can use that signal to deliver really great experiences. And if those experiences are agentic, that's kind of context engineering. Can we get real-time customer context and give it to the agents? The agent can be that much more effective. Or if it's a machine learning use case,
can we compute features that summarize what this user is doing right now so that the machine learning model can return the best predictions right now. And that's what Signals is doing, built on top of the core pipes that we've had forever. That is a total change in persona.
This is kind of related to the first part of what you were saying there, but having that shift to sort of the cloud owner, to someone who sort of owns that centrally, or that new cloud infrastructure. Do you see any shift in that, in the fact that because of the stuff that's being released, I'm talking about AI and LLMs and the speed with which new features and capabilities seem to be coming online, is that central ownership that everyone has to feed through potentially going to cause bottlenecks, and there's going to be more need to sort of democratize the ability to handle that sort of cloud data and put it in the hands of everyone?
It's a really good question. So I think even before the AI stuff came along, particularly, people were recognizing that there was a cost to having a central data platform team, that team ends up becoming a bottleneck. And that was very much the motivation for Zamac's data mesh, and the idea of you can have a centralized team, but they're really about policy and building reusable systems. And then you want the actual ownership and management of the data to be distributed in the team. So even before the AI stuff came along, that was a shift we saw. And even before sort of Zamac wrote her paper on the data mesh, we observed this journey that our customers would go on, where they'd adopt Snowplow as part of an effort to centralize their data stacks. And often they'd say things like, our data's a mess. We've got like 100 different teams. Each of them use Google Analytics inconsistently. We go into BigQuery. No one can make head or tail what any of this means, and none of it's documented. So they do that, but then they'd find that the centralized system was too rigid, and so the pendulum would swing back. And we spent a lot of time building, we call it our data product studio, so our tooling to help organizations manage either the centralized governance or the decentralized, knowing that they'd probably move between the two over time. Then when you lay the AI stuff on the top, you find that infrastructure has some pluses and some cons. So the plus is you've got this well-governed data set. So if you're building applications on top of it, that can be a great foundation, especially with the longer term data. So if you've got your customer data, if you've reconciled it across different sources and you've got really clean customer tables, when we implement Signals for you, we can reach into the data warehouse and go and fetch those records and pull them back. And it's really fast to be able to pull really highly relevant, highly actionable information. Two challenges though are often that isn't the case, and the time to onboard new data into that environment is too slow. Then also the computation of that data is typically happening on some kind of cron, so it's no good for real time. And real time is really important because we're all so the one thing we all have a finite amount of seconds in the day, and whatever my wife tells me, we can only concentrate on one thing at a time. When we think we're multitasking, we're just switching between tasks. You can't really do three things at once. So if you're an organization and you have someone's attention, that's gold. You could lose that at any second. You have no idea if this, like, what notifications are appearing on this user's like handsets, where they are, what could happen the next minute, and the costs of driving them back into your website or your app could be really, really high. So you've got to make the most of it. And so you've really quickly got to figure out, what is this person doing, and what's the best experience I can deliver to meet them where they are. And that real-time flow is not, it's just not like the modern data stack. It's just too slow. It's too slow to onboard the data. It's too slow to process the data. So all of that is perfect for that kind of stream analytics, where the technology has been around since 2015, but organizations are still sort of struggling to do that. And that's a lot of what we're sort of solving for with Signals is the real time piece. So helping to come out with a way that organizations can hook into their deep store of information on their customers, but also providing an alternative path to really quickly figuring out who this is and what are they doing now, so I can take action in milliseconds, not in minutes or hours.
How has I'm just thinking about what, the point in time when you were, well, not a single point in time, but when you started building the core product and right up until probably Signals came out or you started working on Signals, the pace of change with the technology that you were working with will have been a lot more manageable. So how have how have you adapted to work on Signals, which is going to be something that's just going to be, breakneck speed compared to what it would have been like? So how have you kind of changed as a company in terms of your, how you're actually managing and building that product?
That's such a good question. It's we're on our own journey. So you've seen this. It's never felt like the data space has moved slowly. We've had the whole real-time thing happened. We had the cloud data warehouse stuff happen. And now we had all the machine learning stuff, and now we've got all the AI and agentic stuff happen. So we've always been in an industry that's moved really quickly, but nothing has moved as fast as AI, especially this sort of wave of agentic AI that is since 2022 when ChatGPT launched. And it's been interesting. Snowplow's 140 people, I think, at the moment. That feels like a big company to me because I've only ever worked at least. And I sort of remembering the early days. I know it's a small company relative to a lot of others, and it still feels like it's been a struggle for us to adjust to that pace of change. It's like just keeping on top of all the developments in the tech is more than a full-time job. So no one really manages that. I mean, the amazing thing about AI is obviously that it's an incredible productivity multiplier for us internally. And so we've been learning how to use Claude Code and agents to help us develop our products faster. And that's been a shot in the arm. But it's not been a shot in the arm. It's been something it's been a new set of tools we've had to learn how to use to drive us more effectively. And we're still very much on that journey. We've seen a ton of benefits, but not as much benefits as I think the hype suggests. I think there's just more learning. There's more learning to do. And it's hard to learn from other people because you've got to cut through a lot of the hype. So that's definitely been part of it on the delivery side. The other part of it is, I think a lot of us at Snowplow, myself included, spend a lot of time in market with our customers and prospects, but also with the next generation of startups, because they're where you see the new patterns and the new approaches. Because they're smaller, they're more agile, they get to experiment with the stuff the rest of us will only experiment with later. And sort of building for the future that they're already living is a much safer place to be, because pace of change is just so enormous. I feel like we've got one foot in the present with our current customer base, and we've got to keep them happy and help them solve the problems they want to solve, next month and next year. But we've got another foot with these other guys who it feels like are living on another planet, and we're seeing what's coming over. And that means we can see what's coming over the horizon and build to that. And it's uncomfortable, but it's really fun. There's so much creativity right now, so much creativity and innovation.
Speaking of that, I guess this is going to tie together a couple of points, but you mentioned right at the top that the bad old days of like 2007 to early 2010s when there was an app for everything and you were trying to figure out that, and obviously the pace of change of what's coming up now. I'm interested in what your reaction is to like the OpenAI integration and surfacing all of those, the e-commerce and all of the rich sort of modal pieces just directly within a chat interface. Just generally what your thoughts were when you saw that and what popped into your head.
Oh, it's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about. So I really recommend everybody who read, I think Brian Balfour from Reforge has written some really good posts on it. And I'm going to I'll try and summarize them because I think they're the sort of foundation that have shaped a lot of my thinking, and I probably won't do them justice. There's this sort of, there's several stages that platform companies go through when they're growing, where they kind of open the gates and play nice with all their partners, and everybody rushes to work with the hot new thing, and it's a new channel, it's a new way of doing business, and it's the future, and it's this kind of, and you see, so when it's successful, you see this whole ecosystem of companies grow up around it, and that carries on while the company is building a kind of a competitor mode, its competitive moat, so figures out what its moat is, and it's driving that moat. And then when it thinks the moat is high enough, it will bring the doors down on that ecosystem. It will start competing with its most successful partners. It starts ratcheting up the cost to play. At that point, they become an incredibly valuable company. And OpenAI are going through like that kind of, that's the journey that they went on, and Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Google search and all these different platforms. And what we're seeing with OpenAI is that whole journey happening in a much, much shorter way. So ChatGPT is an amazing technology. Like these or specifically the LLM is an amazing technology. You can use it. There's so many opportunities to use it, to rethink so many things that we take for granted. Fundamentally changes what a computer can do. It fundamentally can change everything. And in ChatGPT, you have an application where without integration with anything, lets you do a huge amount. I know, people who get all their medical advice, their legal advice, their use as a brainstorming tool like that. It's just sort of incredible. You look at what they're doing with shopping, for example, and the deal with Walmart like last week. So letting people, it's great for them. People can do more in ChatGPT. It's actually a great place for a variety of shopping related tasks, like researching what product you want to buy. And then, so now you can actually buy that product in ChatGPT without ever leaving it. And for OpenAI, their moat, the ChatGPT moat is memory. So if you're one of those people, and there's more and more of them around the world who kind of live in ChatGPT, and you're doing it's your therapist, and it's your financial advisor, and it's your lawyer, and it's helping you with your work, it has an amazing knowledge of you that probably no other organization in the world has. And it can use that knowledge to do all kinds of things. And we're like the obvious example is sort of suggest products that you might want to buy. But even by saying that, I'm showing that I'm sort of stuck in the old world. Because in the old world, that was like the most valuable thing you could do with the information that like Facebook gleaned. And you could figure out what someone might buy and what they might vote. And both those two pieces of data are very, very valuable and can be monetized very, very easily. I strongly suspect that there's going to be a lot more high value stuff that you can do with the ChatGPT data. So OpenAI are building this amazing competitive moat, and they're really turning ChatGPT into a super app. It's conceivable that you might spend more time in ChatGPT than you might do in the browser as it becomes more and more powerful. And then even if you're in the browser, OpenAI, I think, are planning to release a browser with ChatGPT, and there's ChatGPT will still be there, seeing everything you're doing and helping you every step on the way. So it's very clear what the benefits to OpenAI are of bringing all this activity and all these partners into their ecosystem. And what the partners have to think about really long and hard is, what does that mean for them? They can go and they can partner with OpenAI, and they can launch their own applications and their ChatGPT marketplace, and they can try and carve out a space for themselves in this new platform. But everybody knows that door's going to come down, and either they'll be kicked out or they'll be made to pay a very high price to stay there. And so they have to think, they have to do that. I'd argue they don't have a choice, because that's where the whole world is moving. But they also have to build a strategy that gives their customers a reason to engage with them outside of ChatGPT. So otherwise, they're going to be like Zynga with Facebook, all their eggs in one basket. And just too high risk a business strategy. So I think there are important implications for them. And then from a customer perspective, a kind of consumer perspective, I think there are lots of benefits to a really powerful agent or set of agents that can do all of this stuff. And it's really fun being a ChatGPT customer and seeing all this new capability come online and find new uses for it. But we've been worried about what data big organizations that don't necessarily have our best interests at heart have done with that data in the past. We should just be terrified about the possibilities with OpenAI.
That's kind of the argument I was making. If we had Brian Clifton on a while ago, and he was talking about the change in privacy and how individuals were starting to get a bit more clued up and we're taking the power back and we're pushing back on their privacy, and the newer generation are saying no to this and more ad blockers and all that sort of stuff. My argument pretty much echoes what you just said, is that most of what you were getting out of allowing these companies to have more of your data was ads personalization pretty much. But the idea with these LLMs is the more data they have on you, especially if they end up working in like assistant and agentic capacities, they get better. Like you're getting a better product by them knowing more about you. So it's a really hard thing to sort of see all of this unbelievable tech that looks like magic and not engage with it and not give it more and more information out of you to unlock all of these new features.
Yeah, it's in some ways it's really similar to what's happened in the past, but just 10x. If you think about how, like, the therapy example is terrifying. There are people who are sharing their innermost and deepest thoughts. I'm fundamentally an optimist, and I think the OpenAI guys are doing what they're doing for, at worst, commercial reasons, which is I have no problem with. And at best, there's lots of like idealism and wanting to solve like lots of the world's problems with this new tech. So I don't think they're people, but a bad actor could absolutely use that information to do some real damage, to manipulate people in all different kinds of ways. So the stakes are much, much higher than they were in the previous paradigm, much, much higher.
Yeah, Sora itself was, that's where I tipped over the edge of, they got everyone's best interest in heart, and when they created slop talk in the form of Sora, that was indistinguishable to me. I was like, that's a very a bit of societal danger there for profit. But
yeah,
anyway.
So I was just going to say, shifting a little bit from like what the end users should or might be concerned about. What about you, Yali, and what at Snowplow, when you see OpenAI trying to bring more and more into ChatGPT, how concerned are you as a company that that's going to lead to less and less data available for clients to capture, and therefore maybe need a product like Snowplow?
I'm not too worried about that. I think we and a whole bunch of other organizations have a huge interest in making sure there's a thriving and open web outside of ChatGPT. And I don't think that's that always has to be the case. Like even OpenAI need that to keep training models. There has to be some reality that sits outside ChatGPT, or ChatGPT is going to keep eating itself. So, and then the other thing is, at least at the moment, is ChatGPT is just chat. So what we've learned is that chat is very powerful. It's very flexible. It's a great interface for a whole bunch of user experiences, but it's just one. It's just one type of user experience pattern, and there are probably others that are much better suited to solving other problems. So I always like to give the example of travel, because it's travel industry is an example of one where once upon a time you walked into a travel agent and they would give you this kind of white gloves. Well, I don't know if it's white glove, but they've really sort of stepped you through the options and curate your trip with them end to end. And that was very nice. They didn't have to do much work, and it was quite fun and enjoyable, but it was really expensive, and there was no real competition in terms of you had to take or leave what the agents gave you, what the travel agents, the human agent gave you. And then we went and we learned with the early internet how to build our own itineraries, our own trips. And you buy your flight here, and you buy your hotel there, and you look at this travel guide and this block to figure out how you get from one place to another. But that was a huge amount of work. So agents could bring us back to that original model, but you probably want an agent that can generate some kind of when you're thinking about inspiration, it'd be nice to have some kind of brochure that you can flick. That like magazine experience is really nice when you want inspiration, but you can maybe talk to it, and as you're talking to it, it can adapt in real time, and you can keep flicking through it. And at some point you might say, well, I think it's going to be this destination, and then maybe the UX pattern changes and it's less about a brochure that you'd scroll, and it's more about diving into the destinations, what the similarities are, the differences are, what you really want to get out of the trip. And then you might be comparing hotels. So that kind of much richer UX experience feels really powerful if you narrow your domain down to a particular customer journey. And OpenAI are always going to be building for all journeys in ChatGPT, which is just a really big ask. So there's a huge amount of space for most companies and most industries to really think about how to use this technology to build the next generation of domain-specific experiences. And if they're good, people might start in ChatGPT, but they might then hop over because they want that brochure experience. They want to keep having to like talk to the chat agent to just see little boxes of destinations. They want to like be immersed in the experience. Maybe they're on their iPad or whatever. So I think there's such an exciting time to be thinking imaginatively about what those digital experiences can be and be investing in them. And I think that's the kind of thing that we see a lot of the startups doing, whereas a lot of the more established organizations at the moment are still trying to get on-site agents working for their customers effectively. So it'll come, and I think it'll be big, but it's one of those things that I think will take a while to happen. But I think it will happen. So I think there will be a thriving web outside of OpenAI.
It just might be a fundamentally different experience, like you say. You can see, like even playing with Claude Code, like I know you guys say you've been doing that internally. Some of the stuff that can just produce, especially if you give it underlying frameworks to adhere to and things like that, it can just sort of create this page. You can imagine really just completely dynamic pages fitting, almost like we saying with signals, like fitting to the customer journey of like, they've done this, I need to generate a page that has these features on it because this is what they need next. It just might be a different way of web developing and fundamentally.
I think that's exactly right. I think just almost like just-in-time development, the agents figuring out right at this minute what the right experience is, and it's more like we have to see how it goes. We have to see what our expectations as users. It'll take us a while to learn how to use this because it's a bit. I think we need to learn. Like we're still learning how to use ChatGPT effectively, and we'll have to learn how to use these new generative experiences.
You can't phone up your grandma and say, click the button at the top. It's like, there is no button at the top.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're all going to have to change a lot. It's going to be tough for grandma. It's going to be tough for all of us.
Well, it is, and there's a lot of talk as well about how the AI tech, it's limited by how we're using hardware at the moment, how we're using devices, because obviously devices were developed for a technology that was significantly older. So it's like this, and then there's rumors about this Johnny Ives, Sam Altman collab, and all these different types of pendants you can wear around your neck, or whether it's the Meta Ray-Ban glasses. But we are still thinking in terms of this being something that we interact with by typing something into a box. And that might not be how we're interacting with these chat features, these LLMs in, 6 months' time, 2 years' time, whatever.
I'm sure you're right. Typing is going to seem very archaic. I can't work out whether to tell my kids to learn how to touch type or not. So I think it might be a complete waste of time.
It's definitely going to be one of those things, isn't it, where they look back and say, I can't believe you used to use your fingers to type messages.
Of interest with all this new technology, and I know you said earlier, You've mentioned startups a couple of times, and that being like a bit of a signal for you of what's coming over the horizon. Have you seen an explosion in startups with this, all the sort of new LLM technology, or has it remained static pretty much throughout the lifetime of when you've been looking at them?
No, there's been an explosion of startups, and the turnover in those startups is very, very high. There've been startups that started 2 years ago that folded or pivoted.
Yeah.
But the technology is changing. It's changing so fast. It's a really exciting time to build a new business, but it's a really tough time in the sense that it's not clear. You're building on shifting sands. You know, the expression.
Yeah.
The expression is. So I've got a huge amount of respect for the founders that are toughing it out now. It's definitely harder for them than it was for us when we started.
Yeah, I can think back to say 2023 or 2024, early 2024, where you see all these new startups appearing on say LinkedIn or elsewhere that maybe were like connecting up your BigQuery data to here and analyzing your BigQuery data with an LLM or parsing a PDF, and they play so much within the potential tooling that will appear with these frontier models as they mature, like we're seeing now. That one off the cuff remark by Sam Altman on stage can bury 60 companies overnight. I shouldn't laugh, but it's just it's crazy.
It's brutal, but it's part of that open platform, closed platform shift. The AI tools for development are like the probably the most mature. Like engineering productivity is probably the most mature use case for this technology, and both OpenAI and Claude now have really compelling products in market that compete with a lot of their best customers in terms of Cursor and Windsurf and Devin and others. So it's I think the Cursor guys have done phenomenally to keep building great new features and they keep people using Cursor alongside Codex and Claude Code. But like what a market to compete in. What a terrifying prospect to be relying on these, partnering with these providers while they're competing with you. You got to be made of really tough stuff.
On the optimistic bent of it, it does feel like anecdotally, just looking at GitHub and looking at what people are creating, the open source world is booming because of all of this new tooling. It's kind of it's facilitating people to be solving very niche and specific problems for themselves and then releasing that out into the world, which feels really good and positive to see, just to turn it around to a positive.
Yes. Yeah. And I should say I'm hugely optimistic about all of this. I don't want to come across as a Debbie Downer.
I dragged you down. I dragged you down.
It's there's a huge amount of opportunity. There's a huge amount of, every time there's a lot of opportunity, there are also a lot of dangers to navigate. And when things are moving fast, it's really exciting that anyone can now write applications, can publish them, share them. It's interesting. I don't know to what extent, like with the model with open source is you make the source code available. I wonder if actually what we should be making available are the prompts that we use to generate the source code, so people can take them and play with the prompts. But maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe take the source code, and the agents are now so good at figuring out how they're built, and you can edit them that way.
We have done like something kind of not exactly like that internally, but when we've been using Claude Code, we've created a GitHub template. So it's got a Claude MD file in there, and it's got as various pieces of information about the stack to use. So an individual can just pull that down and then just start typing away, and it looks at the Claude MD file, pulls a lot of context out of what it needs to do and how it needs to structure things. So it really takes even further away all of that initial jump, and that's been quite effective to getting really nice looking things out quite quickly. So I suppose it's akin to a prompt, just a very big, complex one. Next year, 2 years, what do you see on the horizon? Is there any big change that you're confident or have a prediction that you would plant your flag in that's going to be fundamental to the industry, or just to if you want to be so bold, to the wider world?
I think I'd go back to prediction I made earlier. I think UX is going to look totally different to how it does today. And so that's going to be really, really interesting for us as consumers, we're going to have to learn how to work with these new UXs. They're going to kind of evolve with us as we figure out how to do that. I think data people, we've got a really important role in helping to figure out what are the signals that matter when you're trying to guess what somebody is trying to accomplish. I think everything, we're going to need to build systems that really effectively give people what they need. And so how good you are at figuring out what your customers need is going to be super, super important. And obviously it's going to be AIs figuring that out with humans. But the people that are good at that, the data folk that are good at that, have got, I think, a very bright future in that paradigm.
All right, Yali, thank you again for joining us. That was a really good chat, and I think we might have to get you on again at some point in the future if you're willing.
My pleasure. That was really, really enjoyable. Love talking to you both. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. That's it for this week's episode of the Measure Pod. We hope you enjoyed it and picked up something useful along the way. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on so you don't miss future episodes.
And if you're enjoying the show, we'd really appreciate it if you left us a quick review. It really helps more people discover the pod and keeps us motivated to bring back more. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.